Yeah. Yeah. Um, cause so okay, let's just start over. The I've been doing a religious fast for the past 2 weeks, and while the what the outline for the fast is abstaining from meat, dairy, eggs, um, oil, so on and so on. So it's basically a vegan diet, but I also abstained from other things like just cutting out relationships that were particularly just amplifying my own resentments and anger and stuff. And I feel like the as a result of doing this fast and just kind of focusing on what is going to help me and kind of walking away from some relationships that are not benefiting my mental health, I've what has emerged is this return to fighting. Like I want to get back into boxing in a in a better way. Just because I was thinking about how I started boxing and I loved it so much, where I would get up at like 6 or 7 a.m. to go train, but I was hungover every time. And the idea now is just to get back into like Thai boxing or something that has a community aspect and without the just constant flow of alcohol in my body, and seeing how how much better I can get at this particular sport.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what got me into it. Community aspect, especially, because I think one of the first things that I lost when I got sober was community, because the bar was my community. And then I also had, like I was saying, like some residual rage from just being
Mm.
sober. And I was like punching walls and like just feeling like I needed to scream like some sort of, kid who's about to be reported. Uh, and I'm saying that as a kid who got reported for punching walls and like wanting to scream, like scraping my knuckles against brick walls and like all of those really intense things that you do when you're, not feeling so happy with yourself. And it's helped me like leaps and bounds in regards to that kind of stuff, because you get this outlet, that you're like allowed, even encouraged to be more aggressive. But a lot of it
Mm.
is also about maintaining that aggression and watching your margins, because you'll gas out really easy. I don't do Muay Thai or boxing because it's too loud. It's just it's so loud.
What does that mean?
Well, you got all the smacking against the pads. It's like, and you got all the high-eyeing, and people are like, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's too loud. I like jujitsu
Not
more because it's more like, ugh. you know, there's a little bit of smacking, but it's not just like smack, 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 smack. And I've done when I first when I first got into it, I was like, all right, I'm doing all of it. I'm doing Muay Thai, I'm doing Jiu-Jitsu, I'm going to do the MMA thing for a while, because I
Mm.
did boxing back in 2012, 2013, and it was mostly against like punching bags. It was like the first time I ever got sober. I was doing a lot of boxing. I did some
Mm.
Muay Thai. Um but like, and then when I came back to it 2 years ago, I remember I was like kicking some pads with some dudes, and I was just like, I discovered maybe I have like a sound sensitivity, because I was
Oh.
just getting too pissed off, like unmanageably pissed off, and not in like I want to burn the world kind of pissed off, but more like that's
Mm.
annoying. That's too much.
So the least fun pissed
Yeah,
off.
yeah, where I'm just like, can you please just like keep it down, please. I can't handle the noise. And so I stopped going. And then now sometimes I show up and jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai is like directly after jiu-jitsu, and I have to like get out of my gi and get into my clothes before they bring the mats out. So they'll be like shadow boxing, and I'm like, I got to get out of here. I'm gonna get pissed off all fucking day listening to that shit.
Yeah, you're like Daredevil.
Yeah, I'm like Daredevil.
Yeah,
exactly. The man with no fear, except for
just
loud noises.
No fear, but really just kind of crotchety when I hear things.
The crotchety
when
man
I
with
hear
no
loud
fear.
smacking.
Yeah, so I picked up jujitsu, and it's been a ton of fun. I've developed a lot of friends. I got pretty tight with my coach, who is also in recovery. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say that or not, but also in recovery, and like that was really helpful. I also discovered that later. I discovered that I kind of lucked out on my gym, just because it seems to be the kind of place where a lot of guys who are kind of expressing exactly what you're saying came there specifically to investigate or like explore that side, right? So it's like a lot of dudes who are, or not just dudes, people who are, you know, trying to get sober, trying to find something. They're usually, my gym is usually older, so there's not a lot of people in their 20s, except, well, maybe in the evening classes. I don't go to those because I'm sleepy, but I go to the morning class. I go to the 6 a.m.s, and the 6 a.m.ers are all like 30s to 40s, and they're kind of there for some reason that's beyond working out. And that's what I liked about it, is that it's like practical exercise without the vanity part of it. If that makes sense.
Well, what do you mean they're there for like beyond working out?
It seems like everyone is there for a reason, to like find something, like to find like a strength or something. I was talking to this guy who I met through jujitsu, and he asked me that question. He was like, "Why do you do jujitsu?" And I was like, "I don't know." And I told him, you know, I had like a stock, like non-emotional answer where it was like, well, I used to run all the time. And then I realized that running is boring, and that you get to a certain point where you're just like, I've been doing this for 2 hours straight, and I don't want to listen to any more podcasts or music. And I'm 10 miles from my house and I'm bored. I'm so bored. Everything is great. The world is beautiful. I got to see it at a cool pace, but now I'm like just lonely. So you like you see all these cool things, and you look around, and you're like, no one cares. And then so I started, you know, I told him that. And then he shared with me that he did it because he needed to learn how to lose. Because whenever he lost, he would like lose his shit. And he was constantly worried about losing or something like that. And I was like, wow, I didn't know we were sharing our feelings here. So because of course, you know, I divert it with a joke, not even a good one. And then he tells me then I told him, I was like, I think I started doing jujitsu to learn how to win. And that's really true. Like, I am so tired of getting in this like loser's position because I don't know how to stand up for myself, or if I do it in a way that is like too intense. And it's kind of like what we've talked about before, where like the alcoholic's margins are so wide that you're either like so fucking sad you can't move, or you're like attacking the world at such an intensity that people are like, dude, you're kind of freaking me out, and I don't want to be around that. And so I was like trying to learn how to just like regulate, and nothing teaches you how to regulate better than when there's like a 250-pound guy who is, you know, in a gi, except that, you know, and is like his bare chest is up against your face, and you got to figure out how to get out of that, and you got to remember to breathe, which is something eye constantly.
Yeah.
Not only do you have to remember to breathe, you got to remember how to get out of that, and you got to do it in the most efficient way possible, and you got to do it in a way that doesn't gas you out, which is something that I still struggle with because I'll just be like using my strength to pull this guy up, which is so crazy when I should be like hipping out or something. And there's always like other alternatives than just like powering through, which is something, I learned through being hungover all the time. You're just like, all right, just got to power through until like 2 or 3 o'clock when this hangover wears off, and then I can be
And then I'm
normal.
going to start drinking
Yeah, and
again.
then I can start drinking again, or And then there's also a lot of like, I don't know. I'm trying to think. There's a lot of like issues that came up in regards to my jujitsu where I was like feeling very mad at how bad I was at it.
Mm.
I mean, it's like comedy. And that was one thing that kept happening where people are like, you're going to get mad because you're going to be humiliated. And I was like, I used to do comedy. I used to do stand up. I've been humiliated. If anything, I'm here to stop being humiliated. So I can get humiliated until I stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really helped with that, like regaining my body, I think is what I'm trying to say. I feel like I fucking fucked my body up because I spent so long just guzzling booze, smoking cigarettes, and not taking care of my body. And I was like, dude, I better get on this before I can't do it anymore. And I have these issues
Mm.
where I can't, pivot my hips because I don't have one. And and so there was just a lot of like anger there where it's like, I don't know, like I could have been a contender or something. But a lot of it though, like health wise, it's great because you don't really realize you're working out. I mean, you realize it later, but it's not like
Yeah.
lifting weights is just like aggressive counting. Like mentally, you know what I mean? You're like, and 10. And you're like, why did you do that? Now you can lift that thing 10 times, which I get. That's a great thing. But
Yeah.
I can also lift that thing 10 times and then also choke it out with my thighs.
Well, and that's why I want to get back into boxing or fighting in general, just because I lift not every day, but I mean throughout the week, and at some point you go like, all right, I lifted that, I did it, I got to a certain number, and great. Okay, but what do I do with this? I can't. I have no practical use for being able to deadlift a certain amount of weight. It's not doing anything for me in life. So why don't we just put it down and go do something with the body, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you might
So
have that M. Night
yeah.
Shyamalan moment where you're like, oh, wow, I need to lift this car off my girlfriend. And it's the exact weight that I've been lifting, you know? But I don't think that'll happen.
I don't think that'll happen either. I think it's I don't even think it's likely that I'll get into a fight in real life. I just would like to meet people in a like in a way that's not just everybody's grunting, and you meet people mostly at the gym by them saying, "Hey, are you using this?" And then you say no,
Yeah.
and that's about as far as the interaction goes.
Yeah. And you're like, what do you do for a living? And they're like, what? Sorry. And they take their
Yeah,
headphone out.
they pull out their AirPods and they say, "Do you need something?" And you go, "No,
No,
never mind. I'm sorry."
just
No.
trying to make a friend. Like, why are you looking at me through the mirror?
Um, but yeah, actually, to go back to your margin talk, because the other thing that has been why I'm a sucker for those like fighting movies. It's probably the most masculine thing about me is that I will cry anytime a fight movie is on, like Warrior, Never Back Down, Roadhouse. These are all the best
Yeah.
movies. Um, and
Bloodsport.
Bloodsport, sure.
Yeah.
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 But it like
Mortal
I'll
Kombat.
watch them and I'll go, I want to do that. What did you say? Another
Yeah.
one?
Mortal Kombat.
All right. Well, we're getting out of the arena of this genre, but yes, I appreciate
Rambo 1 was
Mortal
better than Rambo 2 because Rambo 2 was racist. But Rambo 1 is about PTSD. Anyways,
Which one is the Mujahideen?
that's Rambo
Is that the
3,
third one?
also race. All the
Rambo 3,
Rambos
yeah.
after the first. The first Rambo was actually very, I feel, progressive for the time because it's about a soldier
Pretty astute.
from Vietnam with suffering from PTSD, and the only thing he kills are cops, American cops.
It's the best. It's one of the best movies ever
Yeah,
made.
but then 2, 3, I don't know how many there are after that. He's not killing cops anymore, and I don't like that.
Yeah, he's mostly killing like Burmese citizens or something like that. It's not.
Yeah, and like soldiers that maybe had to sign up for certain things. It's just like small town cops that hassle this guy because he just happened to be walking down the street. That seems
Yeah.
like an enemy I can get behind.
Anyway, I
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Holy shit, man! No,
oh, great movie, great movie.
What do you think with Jet Li is great? Michelle Yeoh is great. Anyways, let's.
Yeah, the one. The thing that's been on my mind this time around, and the reason I brought up the fighting movies is that like I watched clips from Warrior, which if anyone's ever seen, it's Tom Hardy at his absolute best, and it's about MMA, and I was just watching it and like started tearing up and going, man, I could have been a contender. And it's the same like mindset that you had, where I know that in the past when I started boxing, I still had those like alcoholic margins of, all right, well, today I have to be the greatest of all time, or today I have to physically exert my body to the point where I need to crawl back to my car, or something in that realm. Like I have to break myself because that's the only way I know how to do things. And there is no longevity to that. Because it's just doing things like an alcoholic. So finding ways to approach combat sports in a healthier mentality, or just a balanced way, or just trying to find the breath in it, trying to find balance, trying to find rhythm, and trying to, I don't know, do it like you're supposed to, I guess, instead of just trying to throw yourself at it. It's strange because I think that the reason that I'm looking at it like this is just kind of evaluating how I approach most of my life in an alcoholic fashion, of this very black and white type thinking, all or nothing type thinking. And if I can just figure out how to box like a normal person, whatever that means, but if I can just figure out how to box in a healthier, balanced way, then maybe that can extend to other places of my life.
Yeah. And that's, it's great that you're saying that, because that's what I learned through jujitsu.
Okay.
Because if you come in hot, then some dude who doesn't look even remotely tough will annihilate you. Like there's a meme on jujitsu where it's like the guy you think you got to worry about, and it's just like this super buff like MMA fighter, and this is the guy you really got to worry about, and it's like this nerdy kid with like glasses who's just really good at jujitsu. And that has happened to me so many times, especially when I first started, where I was like, oh, I can take this guy. Oh, what's happening to me? Oh my God. And like, next thing, next thing I know, I'm like wrapped up like a pretzel. And then I'm, you know, when I first started, I was using a lot of my strength to get through some of the matches that I was getting into. I don't want to say matches, but spars. And then I would just like be gassed out, and it would be like 5 minute fight, and I would just be so gassed out because I wasn't really doing jujitsu. I was just moving a human body around with my strength instead of using like my intelligence and like the balance and like being a little bit more, you know, thoughtful about my movements and stuff like that. And you have to get strategic, not because it's the thing to do, but because if you don't, then you might throw up.
Right.
And the last place you want to throw up is in jujitsu, because then everyone has to get up and like you have to clean the mat, and it's that's, you know. And then, you know, everyone's like, oh, come on. Everyone's very encouraging, but in a nice way, which also sucks, is because everyone's really nice. But you, by you, I mean me. I mean the general you. I'm sitting there like my heart's pounding. I just got done with a spar, and someone's like, "You want to go next?" And I'm like, I might puke. And like, come on, yeah, like you're gonna puke, yeah. And you're like, I get that you're being friendly in your own way. Uh, and then eventually, though, then like I went to open mat yesterday, and I was that guy a little bit. I was like, people were like, I was sort of, a lot of the older practitioners were like, a lot of the blue belts and above were out there at this competition. So it was mostly like newer white belts. And I am a 4-stripe white belt. So I am like close to a blue belt. So I'm a little bit more knowledgeable than they are. And I just was just like, what's up? You want to do this thing? And they were like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, I already got you in a headlock. And, and it's just like you get into, it's just like a whole shift in mentality. So from there, I've been a little bit more, I say yes to more things at work. I have more confidence at work. And like when I'm speaking to people, especially men, I'm way more confident. Just because I feel like, you know, I think beforehand I've had so many times when a guy would like start screaming at me or dominating me in that certain way where they're like standing over you, like LBJ style. And now I know that if that happens, I can stand up to that. And like, I have some moves in my back pocket that will, if things get so heated, I will be okay. So it's kind of like, you know, if this gets to the worst case scenario, I know that I will be okay. So I wonder, how can I could also be okay in any other scenario.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's sort of like the Stoics, I think they call it negative visualization. Like, what's the worst case scenario? If you can handle that, then you can handle any other scenario that comes your way. And jujitsu's helped me out leaps and bounds just in that arena alone. Just knowing where my margins are, knowing when I can speak, when it's okay to be intense, when it's not okay to be intense. And also how to kind of like gauge. It's also gotten me a little bit more in touch with my own body, because sometimes I'd roll into open mat and I'm just like, yeah, I'm fucking pumped. I've had 2 cups of coffee. I'm like ready to roar. And then I'm like within one match, one spar, I'm just like, I'm ready to go home. I did it too hard. I went too fast. My confidence in my brain is way higher than it is in my body. And so I had to like normalize that, you know? It kind of came out. I started doing yoga to counteract jujitsu. And then I started with doing like very hippy dippy slow restoration yoga, where you're kind of just like taking naps in interesting shapes. That's what it really is. And then eventually I started doing like more intense yoga, and I I like set my mat out next to this girl who was like probably like 20 something, probably been doing yoga her whole life, and she is just like up on her arm, she's flopping around, she's doing these, you know, crazy moves, and I am like, "Oh, I mean, I do jujitsu. I can do that." And I tried to do like a forearm stand, and I landed directly on my jaw in the middle of class, just like boom. Teacher's like, "You okay?" And I was like, you know, my prideful self just like, "Yeah, I meant to. I'm trying to get into a downward dog." Then it's called the chin lift. You know, you wouldn't get it.
Yeah, this is a move I learned on retreat in India,
Yeah, yeah,
actually.
it's
So,
traditional.
yeah.
It's called the southern chin lift, chin smack. But yeah, it's like it definitely helps with that. And when I was doing boxing back when I first got sober, I think one of the best things I ever learned was that I could take a punch to the face
Mm.
and I would be okay. That really opened up a whole world for me.
It's an important lesson.
Yeah.
You can always come back from a punch in the face.
I mean, yeah, exactly. And like, you don't expect to get punched in the face, but once you've been really punched in the face, you're kind of
Mhm.
like, I could get punched in the face by
Yeah,
a lot of people. And then you're like, what are you
boxing.
going to do? Punch me in the face? Because I can do that.
I can take that. I boxed in Atlanta and then I moved to New York, and it was so expensive to box there, so I ended up kind of taking a year or two off, but I did get punched in the face on the subway, and it was fine because of all the practice that I had.
Were you boxing on the subway, or was this after you took the year or two off?
It was during the rest period, so
Um,
it was not I was not boxing on the subway. A guy was just having a tough day
yeah, I got
and
into a
needed.
bar fight here in
Yeah.
Chicago when I was like, you didn't know this?
When?
On my birthday, on my 33rd birthday.
Well, if you're gonna do it at any time, that's the birthday to do
Yeah, the
it.
Jesus birthday. Yeah,
The Jesus birthday. Yeah.
yeah. And I got punched in the face.
Oh,
That
okay,
was fine.
nice.
Well, I mean,
Yeah. Well, did you instigate this?
I don't know.
That is a very diplomatic way of saying yes, I did.
I mean, I was very drunk. I was very drunk. And I feel
Hmm.
like the person also was drunk. And I don't know anyone there that was sober enough to know what happened. But I was freaking out because I thought that I lost my laptop to work. And then I guess I like made someone else freak out. Maybe I said something, maybe not. Somehow it's not my fault. Uh,
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking that. Yeah, I don't know how many words you're going to use to get out of being the responsible party here, but okay.
and and so then this guy just started coming at me, and he punched me in the face and knocked my glasses off. I
Mm.
think I tried to punch him, but it was like, like it was just like a dream punch where you go in
Yeah,
and then your arm just like turns into jello right when you touch.
yeah. It's like a sleep paralysis
Yeah,
punch. Not
yeah,
am I moving right now? It feels like I am,
yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, and it was my birthday. And then the next day I had to throw my friend's birthday at my apartment, which I don't know why I told him I would do it because I had no furniture in my apartment. So I asked for all of her friends to bring furniture because I was like hungover. I had a black eye, and I'm like, "Hi, welcome to my friend's birthday at my shitty house." And it was definitely like, this is my alcoholic friend who keeps fucking up my life. Like, it was one of those alcoholic moments through and through.
Yeah.
And and I don't think I would have been able to take that punch if I hadn't done boxing when I was sober beforehand. I picked up jujitsu.
Part of me doesn't. I don't know if that's true. I think being in a drunk state, you're pretty good at taking a punch.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the only thing you're good at, I think. But as you can tell, I had a lot of anger, and that's the thing. It's like it's about managing that like anger, that intensity, those margins, and my anger comes out in a way where I don't know, in like a very scary way. I've always had anger. I had anger issues as a kid, and I would get sent to the office all the time because I was throwing all these hissy fits and shit. And it's directly linked to my childhood, which I think we could talk about in another podcast, but not this one. And but like I get like triggered by these very small things, and people call me sensitive, and I think that they should be more sensitive, because or I'm gonna punch them.
Yeah, right, exactly. Call me sensitive? You need to shut the fuck up.
You're the sensitive one.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's like I think that's the most surprising thing that people find about me now, mainly because I come off so crunchy, is that I do have this like very deep seated anger that flows through me like Anakin Skywalker. And jujitsu definitely helps out with it. And sometimes even in jujitsu, I have to be careful because now that I'm getting stronger, I'm like coming into intense. I'm like, I can't gauge my own strength because I'm so used to being weak my whole life that I'll be like wrestling people and they're like, can you chill out? And I was like, oh, I thought I was, I guess. And that's kind of what you're talking about, right? It helps with your margins. It helps with like knowing when to go intense and also who
Well,
to go intense with.
the thing that happened earlier this year, um, I started boxing again with vigor. I think in like March or April,
Yeah, with
and
vigor.
yeah, with a real
Is that like a type of kava?
yeah. It's Fijian. Um, I I started boxing again because I was so angry about a certain situation that I was in, and the thing that you just made me think of in terms of like margins and stuff is being able to have that as an outlet also helps you to assess how angry you really are, like how like what you're carrying around. It doesn't necessarily tell you what you're carrying around. Maybe that's kind of up to you to figure out. But I just remember, especially in March and April, like hitting the bag for like 20 minutes straight with just lead kicks and jabs and hooks and blah blah blah, and just and walking away going, oh my gosh, I'm like the angriest I've ever been. Um, and I don't know what to do with this. Thank God that this exists, that I can do it here, but I really need to figure out how to calm down. Um, and it's weird because a part of me thinks that you're gonna be able to, like, I can go box and I can channel all this rage in a healthy way, but sometimes I'll leave the gym and I'll be feeling like that was good, I'm glad I did that, but also I'm still the angriest person in Albuquerque, you know. That's not true, that's impossible, but I think that it's fighting needs to be an aspect of a like a holistic practice. Like it can't be the end all be all, which it was for a long time for me, where it was the only place that I was putting any aggression in or processing anything. But if it's like a supplement to things, then it can really grow out of that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is like a supplement. And sometimes I will find myself very angry walking into class, and and then I get my ass kicked, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't really have anything to be mad about. And then I get my ass kicked by a guy who survived cancer and like didn't pick
Mm.
up jujitsu until he was in his 50s, and like has all these other things, and you're like, I really don't have anything to be mad about. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or
Yeah.
like I get like, there's just so many, there's like all these different aspects. Like there's this, there's, it's like kind of this side of me that like, it's like so mad at anything but myself. And the thing about jujitsu is that it really makes you realize that the only thing you're mad at is yourself. Because no matter what you do, you're going to either hurt somebody because of your own anger, or you're going to
Hmm.
get hurt because of your own anger. And then once you come to those terms, you're like, oh shit, this is just like puppies playing. Like we're like rolling around and we're getting chokes and stuff, but like he's not trying to kill me. And it's sort of like how Native Americans used to do battles with their coup sticks. Like they'd roll up, they'd slap you with the coup stick, and then they would like run away. And that was kind of how Native Americans would battle. That's why you'll see those photos of them with the sticks, and then they have the feathers on it. The feather means that they got a coup, and it's almost like a game of domination, and like without the deadly aspect of it. And it's kind of like this healthier place to put that killer instinct that just does is not necessary in the modern world. And then you meet other guys who don't know that. Like on the train, there's so many people I've met who are like, "Oh man, you don't know what, like when I get mad, I see red and the bodies start hitting the floor." Like that's the meme, right? Like I I remember my brother used to say that a lot, and he's like, "Oh, when I get so mad, it's just I'm gonna start go crazy." And then you're like, Will you go crazy? Because
Mm-hmm.
I know how to get your back in 3 moves, and then what are you gonna do?" And I won't even be
Yeah.
mad because I don't need to get mad because I already know how to handle that kind of thing. And it's almost like anger is the crutch, right?
That's
Yeah,
it. That's the thing. Like, I mean, anger is it's the obstacle. It's the thing that it disallows you to be able to see reality. Um, like when someone says, "Yeah, I get so mad that I see red," it's well, you're not seeing things for what they are. You're just allowing yourself to be taken over by this emotion, and it's a problem because I mean, especially with drinking and stuff, it was easy to kind of reorient the anger or dampen it or something. You could do something, but I mean, with fighting, there is a real need to figure out how to stop being led by your anger
yeah.
because it's gonna you're gonna wind up on the floor and it's not doing you any
You're
good.
gonna not even just wind up. You're gonna wind up on the floor by a guy who is laughing because he thought that you were just playing around. You know what I mean? Like to him, they're like, "Oh, this is great. This is just a Tuesday." And then you're like, all of my encompassing alcoholic rage is coming, and then you get smacked in the
Yeah,
face, and then you're like,
yeah,
oh, rage is dumb. Rage is a dumb thing. But you know, it still exists, and so it's like, beautiful about it. What's beautiful about it is that it allows you to kind of step back and look at it from a third party perspective and address it and be like, you know, poor K, poor K, why am I so angry? You know, like, where is
yeah.
this coming from? And then that's what it's helped with me in so many ways. Is I will be like having one of those intense moments where they would normally lead to me drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that all I really need to do is just like examine that, right? And they always say sit with your feelings. But you don't want to, right? Because we're stubborn assholes. That's why we were functioning alcoholics, is that we were too stubborn to let alcoholism even win. And then and then we got sober, which like took
Yeah.
forever because we were too stubborn to even get sober. And then it's just like so like the only way that's going to make me sit with my feelings is if somebody makes me have to sit down by sitting on top of me and trying to choke me. And then you're like, oh wow, this has nothing to do with like the outside world. No one is against me. It has everything to do with my own shortcomings. And it really just makes it raw. Like it just brings brings all of your shortcomings to the forefront of your mind, and then you have to examine that anger. And then from there, like I've found that my freakouts and the way that I deal with other people come more calmly, because it's not like,
Mm.
oh, you're trying to dominate me, fuck you, that reminds me of all of my triggers and trauma. It's more like that guy is an asshole and I'm not going to let him get away with that. Or it's like, or even smaller things where it's like, I think you could have said that to me a little nicer, you know? And
Mm.
it's like these little, it's like help me
Mm.
like examine my own rage, validate it, but then find a smarter way to go about it.
Yeah, that's it. That's been my experience. Where I mean, just to go back, I think it's really important to underline this, where you all of the general you, um, all of our anger, all of my anger is and has always been my problem. Like it's my it's not anybody else that's making me angry. I am allowing myself to just give in to anger, which is, addictive.
Yeah.
And being led by anger, feel like it's something that I don't know if we said this on the podcast, but just like living life despite your anger. Um, it's this you really wall yourself in, and fighting, boxing in general, there's really no there's really no way to hide from yourself. Like you can it's so clear why you're mad sometimes. Like you really can reach those moments of clarity where you go, okay, I've been at the gym boxing for an hour. I I don't know, like I am angry because blank blank blank, and I've been here because blank blank blank, and now I'm exhausted and I'm going to go home. And I think that I need to change some stuff, or I'm going to not change things and I'm going to just remain in this state of mind. But it's I'm trying not to say anything personal, but I guess I'll just go ahead and say it. But like earlier this year, when I was at the gym boxing all the time, it became like every day it became more and more clear why I was so mad, and it wasn't because of anybody else's choices. It was because of my own choices keeping me in a situation that was detrimental to my mental health. And because I'm so stubborn, I was more willing to just stick it out because then I was willing to walk away from it.
Yeah. I've been there. My therapist says that I have a high tolerance for toxic people because it's what I know. Because I was raised by toxic people. We don't need to get into my childhood. That's a different podcast. But I was raised by toxic people. And so then you don't walk away because you're like, well, what's out there? And then you're mad.
Yeah.
And then you get into this, like, for me, my anger is always being like between a rock and a hard place, like emotionally, where you're like, well, I don't know what decisions to make. And it seems like it's like I don't, the only other option is for me to just be mad about it and power through it until there's some sort of change. And then everyone, like,
Yeah.
in the last podcast, you were like, yeah, but you have to let go and forgive. And I was like, but fuck you. and
Mhm.
and it's like, and and I've been thinking about that a lot, mainly because I've been trying to edit that podcast and hearing you say it again. And it's just like, it's hard. It's hard because if you let go, if you walk away, if you make these decisions that you've allowed to go into your life, right? Like, you allowed alcoholism to take over, and like, you invite these people into your life, and you may not know it as it's happening, but there's also this sort of anger where you're like, well, fuck, I could have been a contender if I had recognized that I was doing these shitty things. But then you're like, but I did recognize them and I did them anyways. And then you're just like, well, now I don't know who to be mad at. And I'm mad at
Yeah.
everybody. And then it gets like, it just like builds and builds and builds on itself exponentially until you're just carrying around this big pit in your stomach that will never get filled, and it just turns into alcoholism, which, like you said earlier,
Yeah.
like, anger is addictive. And because it is like a good force of change, right? Like, anger it's the reason why there's a French democracy, and is because of that. But it's also like, on an individual level, it's like, it needs to be directed in a way that's effective. And that's where jujitsu, that's where combat sports, exercising in general, that's not for vanity reasons. I'm going to push back on any sort of vanity exercising. Um, is for me, like, that's where it goes. But I also think that's where comedy goes. Like, how many times have you seen people get up on stage and they're just like, oh, I do this because I can't afford therapy, and then they just start screaming
Oh,
like bigoted shit, or they're,
yeah. Or you just like the worst one is where you watch a comic have a breakdown on stage
yeah.
and you go, this could have been avoided. This could have been avoided so easily.
Yeah, yeah,
I hope that they respect the light at least.
yeah. And sometimes they don't.
Sometimes they don't. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, those are good places as long as it's regulated. And that's why there's hosts at comedy shows, and that's why there's like coaches, and like, that's kind of like something I didn't really have as a kid, except, well, I had it in Boy Scouts. But it's just like, sometimes you're just so mad that the only thing you can do is just like exhaust your body, that you can't even be mad anymore. And that's what we used to
Yeah.
do. Well, that's what I used to do when I was drinking and smoking weed all the time, is I would just be like, oh, I have all this angry energy. I'm going to destroy my body until I don't have it anymore. And now I just let other people destroy my body for me. And that is called I don't, that's called production. That's called innovation, let them work for you. uh and
Yeah.
it's helpful.
That's it's it's that's I think that's the interesting mark though. Like, because looking back to when I first started like boxing and kickboxing and even weightlifting, there was a point to absolutely destroy my body because I was angry. I think that there was probably a lot of disassociation, like just angry that you have to be in your body at all
Yeah,
for various reasons. Um,
yeah,
and so you just want to punish it. You want to destroy it. You want to, you just like, my body is the reason that I was hurt. It here, here, and here. Therefore, it sucks and it needs to be just eradicated. And I can do that in a like a way that on the surface looks healthy by just pushing it to the limit in the gym. Where the orientation becomes different is finding a way to work out in an intense way without that mentality of I want to work out in an intense way because I want to get better at this. I want to find a smaller margin for my extremes. I want to learn how to breathe. I want to learn how to keep my composure. But there is that intense level of activity that your body needs to go through. It's just you're doing it in a different mentality.
Yeah, more productive. And you're accessing that anger like a well as opposed to letting it overcome you. Right. So
Right.
it's like that's something that was really hard for me when I first started doing, and still is. It's like when to know when to go intense and who to go intense on. And that's like something that is, yeah, it's like using it like a tool. Having control over your own emotions in almost like a meditative state, using your body to get there, which is kind of what somatic therapy is really. But yeah.
Yeah, because it's anger and rage are they're a tool, and it's I think at their most basic utility, they're just a lot of times they're a intuitive emergence from within you, just saying like something's wrong in your life, like there's something out of order. Maybe it's in your environment, maybe it's within you. Regardless of what it is, the anger is coming up to kind of help you reevaluate where you are and how you're being affected by yourself and others around you, which is why it's addictive, because you get into those cycles of feeling almost like feeling like self-righteous or something, or like I know why I'm mad. It's because of you. It's because of you, and it's because of that. And then you just stay there because it's fun to be right, or it's fun to feel superior even if you're wrong. But it's a place where if you're not willing to make the change, it's easy to stay because it is fun being angry. And it's especially fun to be angry when there's a genuine reason to be angry with something about your life. I mean, and you can go a long time without changing things, so that you can stay angry, and it's like a very subtle, like evil that's in us all. It's definitely in me, anyway.
Yeah, and if you don't recognize that change, and anger is all you know, then you're like, well, what's on the other side of that, right? What do you have to push you? Which is something I think I was struggling with in our last podcast.
Oh
And
yeah.
it is like, I think something you said is actually something my therapist has told me once while I was like dealing with anger, which is that anger is the sign of something wrong. That like your true self, which is like who you were as a, like the thing that isn't really influenced by society, like your true internal soul self, is finding something so abysmally wrong that it's mad about it, and it's trying to tell your outer self to fucking do something about it. And sometimes the only thing you can do about it is, flip some people off on the road and like start arguments at bars and,
Yeah.
all that kind
Your
of
true
stuff.
self is going, please stop. This is not what I meant.
Yeah. You're like, I don't really like you anymore. I would leave, but we share a body. And it's like, it's really hard because then it's almost like you have to investigate, and that's where you have to fast. And that's where you have to do, I found myself earlier this year in such a fucking angry space. And I stopped hanging out with friends, and I stopped going to jujitsu, and I stopped doing a lot of things because I had to figure out what is bothering me, what is getting at to me, what is like really, really hurting me. And it turned out that and here it comes. It turned out that I found myself to identify as non-binary, and that I was my queerness that made me so fucking mad. And it was like this lack of expression in my true self that was like, dude, look around you. There are people who are expressing themselves the way that you want to express yourself and have always wanted to express yourself, and you're still playing the game, and you're still masking, and you're still doing all this shit, and you don't have to do it anymore. And then that's when I started looking around at my friends, and I was like, these people aren't really seeing me for who I am, and I need to pull back, and I need to like change, and I need to like start reestablishing, like reestablishing that own persona so that I'm not mad anymore. And I had to cut some people off. I had to cut some old friends off for a little bit just so that I can have that kind of like investigation of anger. And it still pops up sometimes, mainly because, and I found out this is pretty normal for people who like come out. There's this whole like, for me, it was like that scene in Mrs. Doubtfire when Sally Fields finds out that Robin Williams was Mrs. Doubtfire the whole time. And she's like, the whole time? The whole time? That's what it felt like when I figured out I was queer. I was like, oh my God, the whole time? This whole time. Everything is explained now, and now I get it. And no one told me, and I'm 38, and I'm sitting there with Pierce Brosnan and my two kids, and there's my ex-husband with with Mrs. Doubtfire face coming off. and it was like, I was just like fuming. And then eventually I was like, I get it now, and I'm starting to like allow like that side of me come out more and more, and then that anger is starting to subside. And I'm also noticing that people are approaching me differently because of that, and that's also helping with the anger. And so it's like you got to get down to that root and then cut out whatever is like suffocating the root to get rid of that anger. But the only way you can do that is being able to separate yourself from the anger, which is what jujitsu helped me with, honestly. It helped me like come out with my own queerness, and it's helped me like get in touch with my body, but because it's helped me regulate that like well of anger that just sat within my heart, even long after I got sober. And I remember I would just talk to my therapist. I was like, I don't understand why I can't figure out what's happening. Because I thought when I got sober, I'd be like, all right, I did it. It's all, I did it. That was the thing. That was the thing that was stopping me. Now I can go get married and have a kid and like live my happy life. Like you always see those people that like, they get sober and then within a year, they're like, and now I have $10,000 and I own my own business. And I was like, that's all it took. Just had to get sober. But it turns out that wasn't the case. And it was because I was able to like get deep and validate that anger, which is, so now when I approach my anger, I try to do, well, a lot of the things that I do with my emotions that I've learned through CBT is I will be like, okay, I'm feeling something. Why do I feel this way? And there's like that old like saying that my grandmother used to say where it's like, if you're mad I think it's like, if you're mad at everyone around you, you're probably hungry. It's stuff like that. Like if you're mad at yourself, you're probably thirsty. If you're mad at everyone else around you, you're probably hungry. Or it's like, if you're sad, you're probably sleepy. It's like stuff like that. And it's like, it's helped me like reconnect. And so
So is CBT like motherly wisdom? Is that what CBT is?
A little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like, it gives you a chance to go like, why do I feel this way? Why am I angry? Why am I exhausted? And so sometimes you have to ask the punching bag, why you do that. Or you can ask your sparring partner. They may not answer you. I've learned that they don't answer you, but if they do, don't listen to them. But yeah, I mean, that's what I've learned. I just came out on the podcast. You know, I've only told like 9 people that.
Wow, you told like what, 10 others?
10 to 15, whoever listens to this.
10 to 15, 15
If I can
to
figure out
15
how to
more.
make my voice less tinny, it might be more.
How does it feel to say that out loud?
Well, I mean, we come from a culture where saying that out loud may be a death sentence. But because I know that I can fight, I feel comfortable with saying that out loud. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Before that, I knew it was there, and I had said it to some people, and even those people were like, "No, you're not." And and I've, like, I also didn't really have the language for it until recently, but there's definitely always been something there, and I never said it because it was usually something that got ridiculed intensely, or it could mean death depending on who you tell it to, right? Or at least like get your ass kicked for being, whatever, a sissy or whatever, right? Like, we're from the South. Like, you don't say that shit. Like, I don't put my pronouns at work because I feel like, well, first off, I don't think that people should be forced to come out at work. And second off, I don't want to be the target of anyone because that's how I
Yeah.
was raised, that this is something that will target me. And at work, I can't fight anyone, unfortunately. But it does help. Jujitsu helps at work because I can fight them mentally and verbally, and like use like that intensity of when to like be stern and when not, and when to use my voice and when not. And it's
Yeah.
helped me choose my fights and how intense I can go. But like, yeah, I can't like, if someone says something about my gender, I can't just be like, side control to side control to armbar. I can't do that to like to somebody and like keep my
Yeah, someone calls you out at the office and you go to the bathroom and come back in your gi.
You're right.
But I think
You have like HR, and it's like the referee, and they're like, "And go."
Yeah. I think this is the like a really really interesting and like significant component to why I like combat sports. I like martial arts. I like the practice of it because the cultivation of discipline and like everything that we've been talking about, like figuring out how to breathe and figuring out how to focus and fight intelligently, all of these things, I think they allow for the emergence of confidently being in your body and being able to express who you are to others. And there is something to like, I am blank, and if you have a problem with that, I will fight you. But which isn't necessarily like a healthy place to be, but or like the healthiest mentality to have. But in the back of my mind, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't have to fight you. I know where I stand in the ring, or like I know where I stand with my sparring partner. And I also feel good about myself. Like, I can get knocked down and I can get back up.
Yeah.
Whatever you do to me, it really, I don't care. And finding the more, and you can speak to this more than I can because I my fighting is a little like off and on, which is why I want to get back into it. But when I'm really hitting the gym and doing it, there is this kind of slow peeling back of my BS.
Yeah.
Like all the stuff that I walk around with that doesn't really matter. That it's you really do find a place of like it's like the marriage of the conscious mind and the unconscious. Like it does really help with that, and being able to confidently express that is, I mean, it's like an implicit part of the institution of fighting, but it's so important.
Yeah. Yeah, it is like what was it you said in our first podcast? Something about the emergence of the potential self or something like that? That a monk had said to you, your emergence of
Oh,
we ended the first podcast on it, I think. And
I can't remember if it was the first or the last one, but yeah, the Gregorian monk was talking about how, you know, the life of prayer and the consistency and all of these living by the sacraments and devoting yourself to something allows for the emergence of your potential self. Again, I can't recall exactly what he said, but
yeah,
the idea of consistency leading to that was very significant to me.
that's what has come out of it for me. A lot of people, I feel like, with sobriety, there's a lot of like higher power talk, which means nothing to me.
Hmm.
Um, because I don't know, maybe how some people don't have the gene to taste cilantro. I feel like that's what religion is for me. I don't get it, and I don't like hate it,
Okay.
but it's just not something. The question has never crossed my mind. I mean, it has. I'm scared of death, but there's I'm also like scared of a lot of things. Um, and but like what I always loved about religion is discipline, and that's what I've
Hmm.
gotten out of this jujitsu and yoga too. Um, is that there is that emerge that showing up for yourself, the discipline that comes with every day, and even like not getting better, but still just doing it anyways. And as an alcoholic, I don't want to do anything ever. I don't ever want to do anything. I don't even want to get out of bed, but I also do want to get out of bed, and I also want to do everything. Um, and I
Yeah.
want to do everything right now, and I don't want to work for it, but I'll put in the work, but I don't want to do it. Um, and so it's sort of that, like you were saying, like the peeling of layers of your bullshit off, where there's a lot of like, I know that I had a lot of potential, and every day that went by that I wasn't tapping into it was another lost day of me reaching that
Hmm.
potential. And then when I started doing jujitsu and writing every day and doing yoga a lot, because I do yoga like 6 times a week. I do jujitsu um, probably like 6 times a week. I do yoga more than jujitsu. There's just hotter people there. Um, and it's just a sexier crew. Let's less cauliflower ear in that group. Um,
I see. I
yeah,
see. Yeah.
it's a little less intensity, a lot of
Hmm.
namastes, but they do share a lot of the same kind of stuff, which is discipline and respect, and of the work that you put in on the mat. And that's kind of what I've pulled out of it, is just this like, so many times I'll come out of like yoga, or I'll come out of like, I'll get off the mat in jujitsu, and I'll have to look in the mirror and be like, man, I genuinely thought that I was smart, and
Hmm.
I'm a dumbass. And then sometimes I get off the mat and I'm like, I'm the best. I'm a smart ass. And I think that's the balance, right? Of being a smart
Sure.
ass and a dumbass. And in the end, I just have a great ass because I'm doing jujitsu and yoga all the time, because it's double the ass. That's a pretty good bit. I might do that on stage.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I think you should. I think you should take that to the stage.
But you know what I'm saying? Like
Um,
it's
no, I think that just to have the, I think like to have the religious aspect to it from my perspective. The way that I look at fighting currently is this a way for me to walk the royal road of the Holy Cross, which is the idea in the Bible. It states, of not only a few times, but just the idea of dying to yourself and carrying your cross and following Christ. And the idea that I have in application toward fighting, which is outside of religion and theology and stuff, kind of like the only other thing that I really, really love and enjoy. And applying it in this way, I can see it better, where the cross is my addictive personality or my addictive qualities in my mind. Like the need to have intensity, the need to destroy something, if anything else, just my body, and the want to have those extremes. But the cross is not being led by them, but carrying them and using them for my own benefit, instead of just being absolutely rendered nothing by them, right? So like if I can just grab a hold of my want to be everything that makes me an alcoholic, if I can figure out how to hold it and like just channel it in a way, then that's carrying my cross.
Yeah.
Because I can't get rid of it. I can't not be an alcoholic, right? And so if I can just figure out how to reorient that, then that's what I can do.
Yeah, that was my goal when I first got sober too, and the reason why I got into jujitsu and yoga is this acceptance that it's not going to go away.
Yeah. Which that's a hard thing to accept. Like I mean, 3 years into sobriety, and I'm just going, is this going to end?
Yeah.
Does it ever?
Yeah. And you're just like, oh, I thought I would get sober and then it would like cool off, and you're like, nope, just the opposite.
Yeah, it's like I overheated the engine. I just need to like just put it in the garage for a little while.
Yeah. And I think that's why we started this podcast, was to investigate that intensity. And it is like, it's just this thing that exists, and it is me. It is who I am, because sometimes it's the thing that saves me. I mean, not sometimes, most of the time, it's the thing that saves me and other people. I mean, it's what makes such a huge part of my personality, is just having this intense sort of power behind some of the things that I do and say, and the confidence that comes from being able to do that. Like sometimes I meet people and, it just kind of feels like they're not running at the same speed as I am, and I don't get it. And then I don't really know how to operate with them. And then they also don't know how to operate with me. And I get that. But the other way around, I'm like, you guys just like talk about TV all the time. Like you guys just get together and like, what do you read? And it's just like, everything is very beige, and I can't handle that. And so I end up chasing this intensity thing. And if I don't have a healthy place to put it, like combat sports, then I don't know what else I would do. I would just end up drinking.
Right. No, exactly. That's it.
Yeah.
Like it and the thing that I've also found with doing boxing, or especially kickboxing, but you meet people, they're not necessarily sober or in recovery or anything, but they get
Yeah.
it. Like you can look in their eyes and you go, holy crap, there's like an animal inside you, and it's also in me, and we can at least meet. We can meet halfway, and there's something that we understand. There's a mutual understanding that I don't know. Like if I didn't have a place to put that, like you said, like I would have to drink just because. What else am I? I'm just like a
Well,
maniac walking
that was
around.
the thing for me because I was going to get back into stand up comedy, but I couldn't go into a bar without having a panic attack. And so I remember, dude, I remember one time I went to Lincoln Lounge here in Chicago, which is like super awesome comedy place. Like if you're going to do comedy, like that's where I would tell everyone to go see it. And I walked in just to go watch a show, and the smell of the comedy bar and everything sent me to a place where I was like, I gotta go. And
Yeah,
I was like, man, I can never get back into comedy because they also have that same intensity. There's that look in their eye where they get it, and then they also get like an extra shot, and then they get a little bit more. And then they're doing shots on stage like it's a joke, and then they're up there talking about how they one time got so drunk, and you're like, I don't know if that's a bit or if I'm concerned about you. And and then they say things like, "Oh, I do this because I can't go to AA," and you're like, "Okay, well, all right, maybe they don't get it." But with like,
yes, right.
but with like martial arts, it's kind of like the martial arts itself has like that limiter on it, so that like because you can get up there and you can do comedy drunk as fuck, and some people are really good at that, and that's like their whole bit, and but no one can do martial arts drunk as fuck. And so they're already
Right.
like, because of the hobby itself, you're already managing what you're eating, what you're drinking, you're already kind of in an alcoholic state just to do the hobby. And so it, like, to me, I was like, well, this is a natural choice. But yeah, they get it.
Yeah.
They get the intensity, they get the kind of weirdness, especially jujitsu is very weird when it comes to humor. Um, and they also are in this very similar journey in the sense that a lot of the people who go into it, unless you're like a kid, a lot of the older people I find that go into it are searching for the depth or the limit of something. Like they're trying to find their margins. They don't want to be comfortable. They, there's this very kind and lovely Canadian woman in her 50s who drives me home from jujitsu every morning. And she has 4 kids, and she works at, she's like an school administrator. And she says sorry. And she's like very just incredibly kind. And one of those really kind people that used to, like when I was a drunk, would annoy me because they were too nice. And also one of the biggest badasses on the mat that I've ever met. She popped her knee. Like her knee had to go to surgery, all of this shit in class, and on accident, right? And within a couple of months was already back on the mat with a knee brace in, just trying to do rolls or whatever she could. And then a couple of months after that, she was sparring again like it was nothing. And it's like, you wouldn't expect that from someone so kind when you meet her. But also like I don't know why I think she's doing jujitsu because she started it because her kids started it. But that shows to me like a testament of like a potential depth of intensity that I don't think normal people have. I don't think normal people would be back on the mat after they pop their knee. I think that's like people get on the mat or get on in the ring for, in your case, to kind of see like they can do, right? Like, or something.
Yeah.
And then to access
Yeah.
that anger and to push that anger and build a well around it so that they can use it when they need it or something, I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's the when you describe that woman too, like my first thought was that these are my people. This is my kind of my kind of person, because I think you're right. I don't know for a fact if you're right, but I feel like you're right in just saying like normal. Not everybody would do that. Not everybody wants to learn jujitsu or like be. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like it attracts a very specific audience that is interested to see how far they can push, what they can do with their body,
Yeah.
and how well can they get into their body and figure out how to use it. Because that kind of thinking itself doesn't seem normative to me. Like, and I guess maybe I'm just thinking in terms of being a drunk for so long, but I never thought about my body in terms of getting into it and like feeling it and feeling my heartbeat and all this. Like I was just pumping it full of chemicals all the time, and it would just get me from A to B. It was like a junker that I drove around.
Yeah, it was just to get from one mic to the next.
Yeah.
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 But that was like, it's almost like comedy is to the mind what jujitsu is to the body. Like we did comedy because we wanted to see that same kind of potential. We were still trying to test what we could do and what crowds we could control. At least for me, it was like a control issue. and what you can gain, and like the challenges. Like we would try to get on like shitty mics specifically so that we could see, oh, well, let's see if we can turn this one around. You know,
that's a great experience.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it is. It was just like, let's see what we're capable of doing.
People don't do that.
With
I find most people are more like, let's see how I can coast through this to that to this, and then they die. And then that's the end of it. And then everyone's like, they made great cabbage pie or whatever. I don't know. I don't even know what cabbage pie is. I don't know why I said that.
I think you just made that up. It sounds
cottage
good.
Pie.
Cottage pie, yeah.
And they are like, you know, they're like, they were a beautiful kind of okay grandmother, but it's like they were so sweet, you know. And then they get a little gravestone that says like, father, brother, dead, R.I.P. And it's just like, to me, that's just not what I've never wanted that. And so that also fueled my drinking. It fueled my comedy, and now it's fueling this. It's just this like thirst for life or something, and anger.
I guess
I get angry when I don't get enough of it.
That's it. I think that has been an incredible moment of zen when looking back at like being an active functional alcoholic and recognizing that there is a real will to live in that, even though it's clearly not going great in terms of living, but it's still this want to do something more than what everybody else is doing. And trying to break away from like you said, like this beige lens that everybody lives in. And maybe you just have to go through it. Like you rebel against the vanilla by destroying everything. And then you rebel against that by rebuilding it or something. But it's still this adventurous spirit that looks terrible in application when you're drinking because you're not really adventuring at all. I mean, I guess like driving home blackout is a real adventure, but there are other ways.
Well, waking up the next morning is the adventure.
That is the adventure.
Checking
that is the
front
adventure
of your car if there's any blood is the adventure. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a little mystery every day. Yeah. You're just in a little law and order.
Oh my God, dude. Yes, the mystery. I remember being like, time to play. What happened to me last night? I'd like reach into my pockets. What do I have in my pockets? Oh, okay, half a burrito. So okay, I had dinner. Uh, and then you're like, okay, well, I spent, I guess, all of my money, uh,
Yes,
or I
right.
gave it away. Who knows?
Either way, I don't have it anymore.
Yeah, and then you're like, why do I have? What is this? I have a key. What is this key to? Uh,
The scariest feeling, maybe not the scariest, but a very scary feeling is knowing that you drove to the bar and then going outside and seeing your car in the driveway and just going, I, I'm either too confident or too good at this. I don't
yeah,
know which one, but this is not good.
it's when you like pop out of bed and you're like, you do like it's like in the movies almost. You're like, and then you look around and you're like, why is everything okay? Why am I at home? Why is there
Yes, right,
nobody
exactly.
next to me? Why is my place clean? This isn't right. And then you look outside and like, why is my car in the driveway and parked well? And you're like, okay, I got to figure out if there's other things that happened that got here because by for all intents and purposes, I shouldn't be here. And that's kind of the thing where you're like, I got too good at this. 10,000 hours I put into this. And
Yes.
and you're like, I don't this isn't a skill that I want. But then you're also kind of
Yeah.
like, but I'm pretty skilled. Pretty cool.
It's not marketable, but I'm pretty skilled.
Yeah. That's where like, that's what brings in all that anger too, is just like you are good at this thing, but it's not something that you want to be good at. And then when the things you do want to be good at, you're not good at all. Um, or you're kind of good at it, or you could be. For me, like with comedy, I get so mad at my comedy career
Mm,
because I feel that if I had actually focused, I would have been better. And it's like now that I'm like trying to get better at other things in my life, I'm like, wow, I never learned how to focus at getting good at things. I never learned the discipline. And so that's kind of like what combat sports has taught me. It's where it's very much like you'll learn this and this and this and this. And I'm like,
yeah.
oh, this is great. And then you have like these things to measure yourself against. And it's not just like showing up and just being good at it, which is something that I've always had. And I've been able to apply that to writing, where I was pretty good at writing, but I never
Mm,
really put any discipline into it because I didn't have to, because I've just like gone off of my own like career. Even now, like just being good at like bullshitting whatever needs to be written while I would like in between drinks. Um, and then there's all this anger where I'm like, man, I'm not good at writing. And now I'm in this weird
mm,
position where everyone thinks I'm good, but it just turns out that I was just drinking the whole time and I was a manipulative asshole. And now I have to figure out a way to get good at writing before anyone figures it out, because then I'm just going to be a broke, sober asshole. And I want to be a rich, sober asshole. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to lose my job here. Um, that's the whole reason I got sober, was to not lose my job. And it turns out that being sober is the thing that's going to make me lose. But and then it's like you hit this rock in the hard place again, and then you have to take a step
mm.
back, you have to breathe, and you have to figure out. I have to figure out how to get out of it, which only comes from just focusing that discipline that I learned through martial arts and through
Yeah.
yoga, which I guess is kind of a martial art if you count Dasim from Street Fighter. Dasim?
I haven't seen Street Fighter.
Oh, he can stretch his arms out really long. That was his thing. He was like the Indian guy from Street Fighter.
That seems kind of racist.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know.
We'll leave
Maybe.
it up to the
I
audience.
don't
Do you
know.
guys think that?
In Street Fighter, when um, I think that, well, it's the connection there with yoga and martial arts. I think that they're intimately connected just because they are meditative practices. Like they
Yeah.
are getting into your body, they are breathing, they are like that you are using. They are holistic measures to use the entire buffalo, as it were. Like because you have to. You can't just go and you can't get into the ring and use your mind, because then you're not going to be able to do anything, and you can't use your body because
Well, you can't joke your way out of a spar. That I've learned. Actually, it's helpful to not joke because that makes it hard to breathe. That took me years to learn.
why were you joking in
Because I
sparring?
can't stop, because it's what I do. It's because it's
you're just cutting
yeah,
up
I'm
all the
trying
time.
to. One of my favorite things to do is when they're doing something, I'm like, I don't think that's how it's done. And then they'll stop a little bit, and then I'll like get in there. It's like,
Oh my
like,
gosh,
that's not how we train this one.
You know how you get when you hear people hitting the heavy bag and you go, that's a bit much. That's a little loud. However you are on the mat, that's probably how everybody
Oh,
feels
I
about
know.
you when you're joking.
Oh yeah, I know. I realized that after a while. I was like, oh, it turns out I'm the annoying one. And that's part of sobriety, is realizing that you are the problem. And you were always the problem. And that's what being angry is all about.
I feel like that's a great close.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah.
All right. I think it's a good time too. Thanks for listening to Functioning with me and Tom. Next week we might have a host. I've been saying that for like 3 weeks now. Or not a host.
Wait, say that again. Not a host. We'll have a guest. We won't have a. You're the host. You're not giving up privileges or anything.
But yeah, we might have a guest. There's a guy from jujitsu who kind of wants to do it. He's kind of like this psychonaut. I think I was telling you about that.
Dude, if we can just keep talking to fighters, then that would be great.
And then,
so I'm getting into my fighting season. So
you're getting back to your fighting weight. And then my yoga teacher wants to do it.
Oh, great.
I know. We probably should have reserved this whole conversation for when they were on, but we'll just turn it into a fight podcast.
Yeah. Well, it's like recovery, fighting yourself,
fighting other people, learning,
fighting other people, and fighting a lot of other people.
Fighting the system, learning how not to joke while you fight the system.
The system will take you more seriously if you're not joking.